As Greece continues to battle its wildfires, explosions were heard at the Volos military airbase, while some tourists and locals remain on the island of Rhodes.
Kyiv calls for more air defense systems as fierce fighting rages on in southern Ukraine, including the port city of Odessa.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is in Washington to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden as part of her first visit to the U.S. as head of state.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump faces fresh charges in the classified documents case, adding to his legal woes.
As forest fires continue to ravage Greece, several loud explosions were heard at the Volos Air Force Base on Thursday evening after the flames reached the building housing weapons. The blast spread fear among local residents and shattered several window panes. No injuries were reported as surrounding villages were evacuated and all military personnel were relocated before the blaze reached the weapons depot. Meanwhile, on the island of Rhodes, some tourists and locals remain despite the declaration of the state of emergency and the subsequent evacuation of 20,000 people. Local businesses are dependent on the busy summer season for income, and a complete evacuation could spell economic disaster for them.
Economically, no family in Kotari area is going to survive the winter. It's heavy because nothing's open. You can't open. What are you going to open to? Locals? They don't go to dinner every day. No one goes to dinner every day. You save. You work hard in the summertime. We work very hard. We work 14 hours a day, even more.
Meanwhile, firefighters say as many as 10 fires have been contained around Rhodes. So far this summer, 124 fires were reported across the country, with thousands more declared across the European continent.
July 2023 is set to be a record breaker as the hottest month on record, possibly the warmest in human history. A few of the highs that have been set this month: we had 52.9 degrees Celsius in China, 48.2 degrees Celsius in Sardinia, 39.6 degrees at night in Algeria, and sea temperatures of 37.2 degrees in Florida. Now, we have been building up to this for some time. If we have a look at this graphic, then the black line shows daily global surface temperatures this year since January, and it's above average all year, building up to the peak that you see there in July. Now, this new all-time record is actually the culmination of the heat waves we've seen on land and also in the oceans. Here's Samantha Burgess from the Copernicus Climate Change Service.
So all of this additional warm air and warm surface water is kind of feeding back on each other. So we're seeing record temperatures warmer than we've ever seen before.
You may have heard that 2023 will be warmer because the El Niño phenomenon is back in the Pacific, part of a natural cycle on our planet. But scientists say it's actually too early for that.
It's not El Niño yet. So the expectation is that with the El Niño developing right now, we will get warmer temperatures to come. And the expectation is that the temperatures for 2024 may be even warmer still.
Indeed, the seasonal forecast for the rest of the year does show continued above average temperatures over land. So what can we do? Well, world leaders will have to act quickly at the G20 and COP28 summits in order to slash emissions of CO2 and methane into the atmosphere as soon as possible. Doing so will slow down the rate of warming, but there's no instant remedy. The heat and the weather extremes that we have been experiencing are with us for decades to come.
A visit to one of Ukraine's historic cathedrals, damaged by a series of Russian airstrikes on the southern city of Odessa. Moscow has pounded the city, which houses Ukraine's main ports, since it withdrew from a critical deal that previously allowed Kyiv to export its grains despite the war. Ukraine is now seeking more air defense systems to better protect the southern parts of the country.
Заслухав доповідь щодо ліквідації наслідків російських ударів по Одесі, по області, і тут, у Свято-Преображенському храмі, який Росія намагалась знищити, відчувається, що наші люди, наш дух, все одно сильніше. сильніше, ніж російський терор.
Meanwhile, fierce fighting continues on multiple points along the over 1,000-kilometer front line. This village in the Khmelnytskyi region was struck twice this week, damaging a local cemetery. This video, released by Ukrainian forces, reportedly shows the moments its troops took control of a Russian position near the embattled city of Bakhmut, capturing supplies, including a machine gun. But while Ukraine has claimed some advances, such as the reclaiming control of a village, Moscow has praised its troops for repelling attacks in the southeastern Zaporizhia region. And Russia's Ministry of Defense claims it resisted 9 attacks by Ukrainian forces in the Donetsk region.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is in Washington as part of her first visit to the U.S. as head of state. She met with U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday at the White House to discuss global trade in China. The talks also focused on international aid to Ukraine. Both leaders highlighted their commitment to supporting Kyiv and defending their economic interests.
Italy and the United States are also standing strong with Ukraine, and I compliment you on your very strong support and defending against Russian atrocities, and that's what they are. It's not just a war, but Russia's committing atrocities.
Competition from other nations that do not meet our standards in terms of worker protection, safety, environmental protection, undermine our companies and workers. So a free trade without rules has shown its limits. We must find the right balance between openness and the protection of our economy.
Her visit comes amid concerns from Washington over her far-right ideology, but her consistent backing of Ukrainian sovereignty and advocating for a stronger NATO have managed to ease some of the fears.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump faces 3 new charges in the case accusing him of mishandling classified documents, including attempting to obstruct the investigation and the willful retention of national defense information. Prosecutors claim Trump asked his staff to delete surveillance footage at his Florida Mar-a-Lago estate that has been vital to the investigation. Trump's lawyers have dismissed the new charges as an alleged attempt by current U.S. President Joe Biden to harass the 77-year-old ahead of the 2024 presidential race. The new charges came the same day Trump said his lawyers met with Justice Department officials ahead of a separate expected indictment over his alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election.
Honored to be here tonight.
Randy Meisner, a co-founding member of the hugely successful rock band The Eagles, has died in Los Angeles aged 77 after a long illness. Meisner added high harmonies to such favourites as Take It Easy and The Best of My Love, and stepped out front for the waltz-time ballad Take It to the Limit. He was in the band when they released Hotel California in 1976, one of the most popular songs in rock history, but left a year later to launch a successful solo career. These 2 cubs are the first of a very rare tiger population, the Sumatran tiger, born in a zoo in 7 years. San Diego Zoo released a video of the siblings, a male and a female, who were born earlier this month. There are fewer than 600 Sumatran tigers worldwide, including those in zoos, and the arrival of the twin cubs is seen as a great success. The mother will keep the cubs nearby for a few weeks before they will be allowed outside for visitors to enjoy.
As the Women's World Cup enters its 2nd week, gender issues in sports persist. Despite progress in recognition and visibility of female athletes, wage inequality remains a major challenge.
On est dans des inégalités salariales qui sont énormes. Le salaire moyen d'une joueuse de WNBA était 110 fois moins élevé qu'un collègue masculin de NBA. Voilà, on a un petit aperçu des inégalités.
From the players that we surveyed, which were 362 players across 6 continents across the world, who played in the World Cup qualification pathways for the World Cup 2023, there were huge disparities within the wages that players received to compete for their national team. 29% of players were not paid at all for this competition. And that meant that 66% of players had to take unpaid leave or vacation from another form of occupation in order to compete in the World Cup qualifiers.
Inequalities in the world of sports are not limited to income. Training conditions for female players also require improvements. Female athletes say they've received hand-me-downs from the men's team.
Nous, les femmes, on récolte souvent les miettes qui restent chez les garçons. Tous les équipements qui restent chez les garçons et qui sont par exemple trop grands ou trop petits chez les garçons, bah, c'est ce que nous, on va récupérer. Donc typiquement, moi j'ai des copines qui jouaient au FC Nantes il y a pas si longtemps que ça et qui récupéraient les chaussettes en taille 43 qui restaient chez les garçons.
Discrimination also manifests through disparities in media coverage given to women's sports.
On est quand même face à des inégalités énormes entre la diffusion du sport au féminin et du sport au masculin, alors qu'on voit qu'il y a des études qui montrent qu'il y a un intérêt des téléspectateurs et des téléspectatrices et que quand les chaînes finalement diffusent et prennent ce risque financier et aussi en termes d'audience, elles ont des résultats.
And public discrimination starts in the private sphere, with prejudice, intimidation and sexism.
J'ai été témoin de la misogynie ambiante qui règne dans ce milieu. On gagne que 3-0 à la mi-temps. Celui qui nous entraîne est extrêmement mécontent de ce score et finit par nous menacer clairement de viol en fait. Et il nous regarde comme ça une à une en nous désignant du doigt et il nous dit vous voulez faire les salopes avec moi, je vais toutes vous baiser une par une.